The bathroom light flickered, casting sharp shadows against the tile. Leo stood hunched over the porcelain sink, his fingers locked around the edge. He pressed down until his knuckles turned white, the ceramic cold against his skin. His breath came in ragged, uneven bursts, fogging the glass directly in front of his face. He did not look away. He stared into his own eyes, searching for a sign of stability in the glass. The silence in the room was absolute, heavy enough to feel like pressure against his eardrums. He forced his shoulders to drop, releasing the tension in his neck. Though his grip on the sink remained iron-tight, he needed a bridge back to the present. He took one long, slow inhale, feeling the air fill his lungs, and held it. Then, he leaned closer to the reflection. He opened his mouth, his voice raspy and low, and spoke the words into the glass. "I am in control of my choices today." He paused, listening to the sound of his own voice vibrating in the small space. He repeated it again, firmer this time. "I am in control of my choices today." A third time, he exhaled the phrase, his gaze steadying as the words hung in the air. Leo reached for a black marker resting on the vanity. He uncapped it with a sharp click and turned to the mirror. With steady, deliberate strokes, he wrote the affirmation directly onto the glass. The black ink stood out against his own reflection, a permanent reminder layered over his image. He capped the marker, set it down, and walked to the desk in the corner of the room. He pulled out a chair, the legs scraping against the floorboards, and sat. He opened a notebook, the paper crisp and blank. He picked up a pen and held it poised above the page. For a long moment, he did not move. He stared at the empty lines, his jaw set. He pressed the pen tip into the paper and began to list the obstacles blocking his path. He wrote, "Substance cravings first," the letters heavy and dark. He hesitated, his hand trembling slightly, before adding anxiety beneath it. Finally, he wrote, "Fitness goals," circling the words. He looked at the list. 3 distinct enemies, laid out in ink. He tapped the pen against the desk and closed the notebook. Leo turned his chair to face the lens. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, and looked directly into the camera. He did not speak immediately. He waited, letting the silence emphasize the shift in tone from writing to analysis. He began to explain the mechanics of the mind. He described the brain as a machine running on tracks. When a negative thought occurs, the brain follows the same path it has traveled 1,000 times before. It is an automatic loop. He held up his hands, interlocking his fingers to show how these thoughts lock together. He explained that these loops are not choices, they are reflexes. He unclasped his hands with a sharp motion. Affirmations function as a circuit breaker. By speaking a new, deliberate sentence, he forces the brain to stop. It is a manual override. He tapped his temple with his index finger. The goal is to interrupt the momentum of the old loop before it gains speed. He stood up, paced the small space, and stopped. He turned back to the camera, his expression focused. He was building a new circuit, one word at a time. Leo walked to the corner of the room where a heavy dumbbell rested on the floor. He gripped the handle, his fingers curling around the cold metal. He pulled it upward, his bicep tightening as the weight fought against him. He paused, mid-lift, holding the position. The strain was immediate. His pulse quickened, and a bead of sweat tracked down his temple. He looked at the camera, his face strained from the effort. He explained that thoughts alone are often too thin to hold against the weight of an urge. He needed to anchor the words in his own biology. He took a sharp breath, bracing his core. He lifted the weight again, the movement slow and controlled. As the muscle fibers reached peak tension, he shouted, "My body is capable of getting stronger." The sound filled the room, sharp and resonant. He let the weight down, the metal clanking against the floor, and immediately lifted it again. "My body is capable of getting stronger." He repeated it, his voice deeper, more rhythmic. Each repetition was timed to the apex of the lift. The physical burn in his arm served as a baseline, a reminder of what he could control. He set the dumbbell down for the final time, his chest heaving. Leo stepped into the kitchen, the floorboards creaking under his weight. He walked to the counter, his movements deliberate. He stopped before the sink. The space felt different here, heavy with the weight of old habits. He looked at the faucet, then at the empty glass sitting on the granite surface. His hand hovered over the glass, but he did not pick it up yet. He felt the familiar pull, a phantom itch in his nerves demanding the old release. His jaw tightened. He stared at the glass, his reflection distorted in the clear surface. He needed to bridge the gap between his current state and the person he was building. He reached out, his fingers brushing the cool glass. He did not grab it. He paused, feeling the cold surface against his skin. This was the moment of friction. The urge to reach for something else, something destructive, clawed at his focus. He took a slow, deep breath. He gripped the glass firmly, lifting it toward the tap. He spoke, his voice low and firm. "I nourish my body with what it needs." Leo set the glass of water on the counter and tapped his phone screen. A digital timer appeared. 60 seconds. He pressed start. The numbers began their countdown, each digit flickering in the dim light. He stood perfectly still, hands pressed flat against the edge of the granite. The kitchen was silent, save for the hum of the refrigerator. He watched the seconds crawl. 10 seconds passed. His pulse hammered against his throat. The urge to move, to reach for the old habits, felt like a physical weight pulling at his shoulders. He closed his eyes, forcing his breathing to remain slow. 20 seconds. A tremor started in his right hand. He dug his nails into the counter to steady himself. He did not look away from the phone. 40 seconds. The air in the room felt thick, heavy with the pressure of his own history. He felt the familiar pull of the impulse. 50 seconds. His jaw ached from the tension. He waited for the final 10 seconds, his focus narrowing until the entire world was nothing but the ticking clock. The timer hit 0. A sharp digital chirp cut through the silence of the kitchen. Leo blinked, the sound acting like a physical snap that broke the trance. He exhaled, a long, ragged breath that emptied his lungs completely. The tremor in his hands subsided as he pulled them away from the granite counter. He looked at the phone screen, then up at the camera. His face was damp with sweat, but his eyes were clear. He reached out and tapped the screen to clear the notification. The silence returned, but it was different now. It was no longer oppressive. It was empty, waiting for him to define it. He stood tall, rolling his shoulders back to shed the remaining tension. He looked directly into the lens, his posture rigid and deliberate. He spoke, his voice steady. "I choose health over the temporary high." He repeated the words, letting the weight of the sentence settle into the room. He did not look away. He waited for the echo to fade. He turned his gaze toward the sink, then back to the camera, his expression hardening into a look of quiet, earned resolve. Leo walked out of the kitchen, his movements measured and calm. He pulled his phone from his pocket, but instead of checking messages, he turned the screen toward the camera. It was covered in small, bright squares of paper. Each one held a different phrase, written in bold, black ink. He began to walk through the apartment, pointing them out as he went. There was one on the corner of the laptop screen, another stuck to the frame of the fridge, and a third pressed firmly against the wood of the front door. He moved to the door and placed his palm over the note. He did not just look at it. He pressed his skin against the paper, feeling the texture of the adhesive beneath. He explained that these were not mere decorations. They were anchors. When the internal noise grew too loud, or when his anxiety began to spike, these notes served as a physical barrier. He touched the note on the door one last time, his fingers tracing the letters. He was building a perimeter of stability, one sentence at a time. Leo stood at the threshold, his hand resting on the frame of the front door. He looked back at the camera, his posture straight and his breathing rhythmic. He explained that these anchors were not magic spells. They did not erase the world or solve his problems in a single heartbeat. They were tools for the long haul. When the urge to relapse clawed at his chest, or when the weight of anxiety threatened to pull him under, he returned to these sentences. They were the ground beneath his feet. He reached down and closed his notebook with a sharp, final sound. The pages settled. He looked directly into the lens, his gaze unwavering. He did not offer a smile. He offered a challenge. "Start small," he said, his voice firm. "Pick one sentence. Say it until you believe it." He held the gaze for a long moment, letting the words hang in the air between him and the viewer. He turned away from the camera, his movements fluid and purposeful. He reached for the light switch. His hand clicked the plastic toggle. The room plunged into shadow, leaving only the faint, glowing outline of the mirror where his affirmation remained written. He walked out of the frame, the sound of his footsteps fading into the quiet of the apartment, leaving the space empty, save for the words he had left behind.